If you have more than 3 priorities in your life, you actually have 0. And so the big idea here is that most people, they have too many goals. They're trying to do too many things. Where my future self is 10 times farther along. Albert Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. So what you want to do is you want to really begin imagining and thinking about your future self. Those 5 questions are helpful. And you can ask those to yourself in your journal every month. You're a little bit afraid to admit it, or even if other people would tell you that's not possible, you can't do that, you want to be really honest with yourself and with your own future self, even if no one else gets it. How's it going, everyone? Happy to be with you. Thank you for having me here. Very happy to be with you. Good morning, although over there it's probably good evening.
그러면은 첫 번째 질문입니다. 상무님, 상혁이님께서 올려주신 질문인데요. 많은 사람이 자기 개발을 통해 자산을 늘리고 급여를 올려야 한다는 생각과 나이, 욕심, 조급함 때문에 매년 집중해야 할 우선순위를 3가지로 정하지 못합니다. 여기저기 기웃거리고 덜 중요하고 긴박한 것에 끌려다니다 한 해를 그냥 허비하기 쉽습니다. 40에서 45세 가장들에게 작가님께서 조언을 해주신다면 책 속에서 작가님의 3가지 목표, 자기계발, 가족 재정이 큰 도움이 되었지만 저의 목표에 적용해 보려니 덜 중요한 걸 포기하는 게 어렵네요. 네, 또한 우선순위를 잘 선택하기 위한 구체적인 방법이 있다면 알려주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so this question is about how do you choose your top 3 priorities in life or even this year? And this comes from, I learned this idea from a book called Good to Great. There's a book called Good to Great. And so the big idea here is that most people, they have too many goals. They're trying to do too many things. And so the first thing I actually want to share with you on this idea, and I'm going to share a few big ideas on how to get really clear with your priorities. But the first thing I want to share, and I'll let you translate, and then I'll share the next few steps, is the first thing you really want to do is you actually want to take some time and look at your life in the past. And you want to look at how different you are from your past self, because this will help you to see how much you've grown. And that helps you really want to have a very good relationship with your own past before you start to get really, really clear on your future. So the first thing I want to say is that you want to recognize and appreciate how different you are from your past self. So the thing that I would have people start to do is think about who they were 10 years ago. Think about back in 2014, who you are now and how different your life is from back in 2014. And you want to really think about how different you are and how much your life has changed in the last 10 years. So I'm going to give you a second to talk about that. And then I'm going to explain more and more how you can get really good at your past so that then you can get really, really good at clarifying your future. So I'm going to share my screen in a second, and I'm going to show you guys all a picture to help you really understand it. But to quickly just build off of what was just said, it's very, very important to realize that your current self, who you are right now, is not the same person as your past self. So it's very beautiful. So let me go ahead and just share my screen, and I'm going to explain this, and then I'm just going to help you really learn how to master your past, and then I'm going to help you with clarifying your 3 priorities for the long future, but also for the short future. Like, for example, the next year, 2024. So you can go ahead and share that, and then I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. By the way, I just wanted to show a picture. These are my kids. These are our 7 kids. We adopted the older 3, and then we adopted these 3, and then the same year we adopted these 3, these twin girls were born. And then this is our little boy, Rex, who I wrote about. But this girl right here, Rosemary, we are right now in the process of adopting her. She is from Guatemala. So these are our 7 kids, and we live in Disney. We live in Orlando. I just wanted to show this, and then I'm going to go ahead and explain to you the past, present, and future. Okay, so here is where I'm going to explain this, and then I'll keep it really simple on on 3 priorities. But this is the common way that people look at time. They think that the past is what determines the present. And so when a person is thinking about who they are right now, usually they say, I am who I am because of the past. what I want to say is that this is not the right way. This is not how it works. It's not the past that shapes the present. It's actually this way. It's actually the present, who you are right now, that always determines the meaning of your past. And so it's not the past that determines who you are now. It's who you are now that determines what your past means. The reason this is important is because it's important to know that who you are right now in the present is not who you were in the past. You are not the same person you were 10 years ago, but you're also not the same person you were 10 months ago. And so you want to always know that in the present, you're the one who decides what your past means. But also, it's very important to realize that you are not the same person you were in the past. So one of the really, really important things that I want everyone in here to know is that your past self is not someone that you want to be mad at. There's no reason to be mad or angry at your past. Actually, you want to love your past self, but you also want to realize that you are not your past self and that you would do things differently. So one of the things that you can do, and I'm going to give you a really short time, but you could think about, how am I different compared to who I was, say 4 years ago when COVID happened in 2020, say, how am I different from who I was in 2020? One of the things you can do is you can say, back when 2020 happened, what were my goals? What was I focused on? What were my habits? Compared to now, what am I focused on and what matters to me now? And so you can start to think about, how am I different from who I was even 4 years ago? The reason this is really important is because you want to know that in the present, you're not the same person as you were in the past, but you can also even do this 90 days ago. You could go back 90 days to, October of 2023, and you can think, how am I different? And how is my focus different even from 90 days ago? And you can start to see that you've changed and you've gone through a lot and you've grown a lot, even in the last 90 days. The reason this is important is because your future self is also different from your current self. So you want to always appreciate that who you are in the present is different from who you were in the past, and that will help you to start to realize that your future self is going to be very different from who you are in the present. I'm going to teach more in a second on that thing, but I want to show you something that I do in my journal. So in my journal, at the beginning of every journal, I ask myself 5 questions. The first question I ask myself is, where am I at right now? And I basically just list a bunch of bullet points. I just list out, here's where I'm at in my life right now. I'm working on this. We're trying to, adopt our girl. I just write down like 5 bullet points, just saying, here's what my life looks like right now. Here's what I'm focusing on. So I'm just going to share with you the 5 questions, but that's the first one, is where am I at right now? The second question I ask is, what are the most important wins or progress, like wins, that I've had in the last 90 days? And so I think, in the last 90 days, what is the most important progress I've had? What are the most important wins that I've had? And I just list those out, maybe 5 or 10 bullets. Like, they could be personal, they could be professional, they could be, that you went on some great travel, they could be that you made a bunch of progress in your work, or you had some great experiences. So I just list, what are the most important wins I've had in the last 90 days? The third question is, what are the most important wins I want to have in the next 90 days? What are the most important progress, experiences in the next 90 days? And I believe every 90 days is like a year. I look at every quarter, there's four quarters every 90 days, as a full year. So in the next 90 days, what are the most important things that I want to experience and accomplish? The fourth question is, 12 months from now, in 1 year from now, who is my future self? And I only give myself 3. This goes to the 3 priorities. So I think to myself, in 12 months, so for us, it would be January 19th, 2025. What are the 3 most important things that I've accomplished as my future self? The 5th question is 3 years. So this would be January 19th, 2027. So then 3 years, I think, who is my future self in 3 years? And what are the 3 most important areas where I've made massive progress? Only 3 things that you can say, these are the 3 areas where my future self is 10 times farther along. Okay, so here we go. So just like most people think that the past is what determines the present, they also think that the present is what determines the future. This is not the correct way. The correct way is that it's actually not the present that determines the future. It's actually your view of your future that determines who you are and what you do in the present. This word mastery, I'm not sure what that is in Korean, but mastery means that this is how the masters do it. Like the masters, they don't let the past determine the present. The masters let the present determine the past, and they use the past as a tool to help them in the present. And similarly, the masters don't let the present shape the future, but they let their desired future shape who they are in the present. So right here in the present, who you are right now is very temporary. Your future self will be a very different person. So what you want to do with your future self, Albert Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. So what you want to do is you want to really begin imagining and thinking about your future self, and you don't want to use your present self as the base for your future. You don't want to make your present self, you don't want to have to make your present self look exactly like, you don't want your future self to be based on your present self. This doesn't mean that your present self is bad. Your present self is great. You love your present self just like you love your past self, but it helps you realize that your future self will be different and that you get to choose who your future self is. It's important to realize that it's kind of like a canvas that you paint. It's not a script that you're trying to figure out. It's not about discovering who you think your future self is. It's about choosing who your future self will be. So you always want to let your desired future determine who you are and what you do in the present. You want your future to determine who you are and what you do in the present. And the past and the future are just tools. They're tools that you use to live very well in the present. So you use your past as a tool to help you live better in the present. You use your future as a tool to live better in the present. So is that when it comes to choosing your 3 priorities, you really just want to think in terms of your future self and what are the most important things for your future self and what matters to your future self. So your future self is a different person than you. And so you really want to think about what matters to your future self. And there's really not that many things. Usually your 3 priorities are the things that absolutely matter more than anything. And what's really important to realize is that what matters to you, your future self, your core priorities, it's okay if other people don't have those same priorities. I get to choose my future self. I get to choose what I really value and prize in life, and I get to focus on that, even if other people disagree. No one else can choose your future self. That is between you and you. And so it's up to you to choose what your life is about, kind of what game you're playing. We're all playing different games. And so you have to say, what is the game I want to play? Who is my future self? And it's okay if no one else understands or disagrees. That's between you and your future self. So this is the last thing I'll say on this, and then we can go to the next question. Is those 5 questions I asked, basically, where am I at right now? What are my wins for the last 90 days? What are my wins for the next 90 days? Where do I want to be in a year? And who's my future self in 3 years? Those 5 questions are helpful. And you can ask those to yourself in your journal every month. You can ask yourself those questions every month or every 90 days. There's a very, very important quote, and it says, all progress starts by telling the truth. All progress starts by telling the truth. So where you really want to start telling the truth is about what you absolutely want for your future self, even if you're a little bit afraid to admit it, or even if other people would tell you that's not possible, you can't do that. You want to be really honest with yourself and with your own future self, even if no one else gets it. It is okay if your future self, say your future self in 3 years, 3 years away. Think about your future self in 3 years and where you would like your life in only 3 areas, 3 main areas. And it's okay if those change over time. But think about your future self in 3 areas, 3 key areas in 3 years. It could be financial. It could be in your health. For me, I really wanted to write books. I wanted to write books. That was my dream. That was my future self. But what I'm saying is, think about your future self in 3 years, in 3 areas. And what I will say is this: it is okay if your future self, if your goals feel impossible. It's okay if your goals feel impossible. In fact, actually, and there's a lot of research on this, you want your goals to seem impossible. You want your goals in 3 years to seem impossible. Remember, this is just between you and your future self. And back to that picture I showed you, it's the future that determines who you are in the present. And you want your future to be impossible. You want it to feel so big that you don't know how to get there, because then you can start letting your future self allow you in the present to start doing things that are very different from what you've been doing in the past. So this is the last thing here, is be really honest with yourself. Have 3 goals, and it's okay if they are impossible. In fact, I only pursue goals that I think are impossible. Now, that doesn't mean I can't do it. It just means I don't know how to do it. And so you want your goals to be so big that then those goals force you right now, because the future shapes the present. Those impossible goals force me to ask myself, what are the very few things that really, really matter that I want to go for? And then I can start letting go of everything else in my life. A lot of the things in my life right now are my past self, but they're not my future self. So you take your 3-year goals, the goals that are 3 years away, and honestly, just say, how much of this can I accomplish in 2024? And basically just say, I'm just going to see how much of this I can accomplish just in the next 12 months. So take your 3-year goals that feel impossible, and now just say, I'm going to go for these in 2024 and just see how far I can get. Then basically what you do is you set goals for the first 90 days. 90 days. Every 90 days, you set new goals. They're huge. They feel impossible, but you only have 3. You're just trying to make really big progress in a few areas, and then you stop doing most of the things you're doing. You just make big progress in a few areas, and you let go of everything else. And so you take your 12-month goals that are huge, and you just say, how much of this can I accomplish in the next 90 days? It is okay if the goal feels impossible, and it is very okay if you don't hit your goal. So in 90 days, if I'm going for a goal that is huge, and after 90 days, I didn't hit my goals, guess what? That is okay. In 90 days from now, I'm going to be different. My future self in 90 days from now is way different than who I am right now, and they know a lot of things that I don't know right now. Every 90 days, you look back, just like I said, and you ask yourself, what's all the progress I made? How am I different from my past self? This is part of having mastery of your past, is that every 90 days, I get to look back and I get to say, wow, what's all the progress I've made? How am I different? What are all the experiences I've had? And then at that point, I can set new goals. So this is part of mastering your past, is every 90 days, you get to see, wow, how am I different? What's all the progress I made? And then from there, you can set a new goal. I'm sorry, I have to say one more thing. Is that okay? So in this book, I don't know what it looks like in Korean, but part 3, step 1. Part 3 of the book, step 1, which is clarify your purpose. Part 3, step 1. The only thing I'll say about this is that purpose is just to get where you're at now to your next level of life. And what I mean by that is, for me, when I was a student going to school, my next purpose, my next future self was to become a professional author. And that felt impossible, but that was 3 years. And so that was my purpose then, and I achieved it. And then I set a next level purpose that was next level. And every time you do this, it feels impossible to get to that level. But once you do it, your life is totally different. This is why I said, think about your future self 3 years from now. And your future self 3 years from now should be at a totally different place than who you are now. Different mentally, emotionally, spiritually, but also different in a totally different situation at a different level, focused on different things. Your future self in 3 years from now can be in a totally different place than your life is right now. You want the goal to be so big, those 3 priorities so big, that they force you to stop doing everything else. You can really only focus on a few key areas that really matter, that are going to change your life. And you've got to be honest and let go. You've got to stop doing and let go of a lot of the things that won't get you there. There's only a few things that will get you there. And most of the other things in your life, it's okay, are your past self. And those are the things you got to let go of. Even friends, even certain things, maybe a job, you got to let go of those things and only focus on the few things that are going to get you to that next level.